Ultimately, as their teacher, I know many of my students are not going to go on to become English majors, and yet I still really hope that not only do they develop a love of literature, but that they start to understand in my classroom how what I'm teaching them will be relevant to their life, whatever path they choose. My name is Livingston Miller. I'm an English teacher here at the Lycée. This is my 5th year here working at the Lycée and my 13th year working as an educator in independent schools. I teach in both tracks. This year I'm teaching 8th grade and 11th grade in the French track, and then 9th grade in the international track. One of the reasons I really enjoy still being able to work in both tracks is sort of as a teacher bringing things across the two tracks and sort of taking some of the things, techniques of teaching, aspects of the curriculum that I've developed by working in the sort of French track and previously in a more traditional American independent school, and seeing how those can serve the Itrack students really well. In the other direction, I've also found that I've really enjoyed bringing some of my inquiry-based approaches back into the French track as well, where an activity I've been trying out more with my upperclassmen is having them develop their own questions so they learn how to ask the questions and not just answer the questions, and hopefully take a more active approach throughout the whole process instead of being a little bit more of a kind of passive receivers of information. The IB sort of framework is interesting for me as a teacher as far as like how I assess students, what I expect of them, how I measure success, because ultimately I don't think the skills I'm teaching students are that different than what you would be doing in a sort of other curriculum, whether that's the French track or a traditional American curriculum. And in fact, I would say for the most part, they're the exact same skills. What I would say though is that the IB sort of measures things a lot more based on the skills themselves, and so there's a lot more encouragement for students to see how these things can transfer from one context to another. Now in IB, I really want students to start to be able to see how these things are not isolated. And so for me, one of the measures of success in this unit has been, can they take what they've learned in English class and see how it sort of resonates. I'm hoping that they start to show like, okay, I've absorbed this skill deeply enough that I can see how it would apply in this new context. Ultimately, as their teacher, I know many of my students are not going to go on to become English majors, and yet I still really hope that not only do they develop a love of literature, but that they start to understand in my classroom how what I'm teaching them will be relevant to their life, whatever path they choose. And the IB gives lots of opportunities for students to make that very explicit for themselves. Like, okay, here's the skill I'm learning, but here's how it actually applies. And I try to think about the end goal and the bigger result of sort of like cultivating not only successful students, but well-rounded students, compassionate students, students who are aware of the world around them. One of the reasons I've really enjoyed embracing the IB is because they have a similar communication to teachers and educators as they do to students, which is the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to embrace putting things into practice, to embrace revision, to embrace the kind of process of learning, and to understand yourself as a teacher, as a learner as well. Each student's different, each classroom's a little different, and so there's got to be a adaptability there. And that's another thing that the IB really stresses is differentiated learning, and I think one of the ways I would measure success for myself is the extent to which I really can differentiate the learning and meet the students where they're at, so I'm not leaving one student stranded in any particular unit or lesson.